Hi, everyone. Welcome to our StreamYard recording. And this is a series of three. This is a second recording. And the theme is around our next exhibit, which is coming up at the end of July. We'll run through the end of July through the end of September. And the theme is elemental: earth, air, fire, water, and space. And so for this exhibit, we're focusing on writers, poets, and illustrators. And so to help out with that, we've invited guest writer Dale Jacobson to be part of this and to give us some of his insights into how we might get started and how we might work with some poetry or some writing around this theme of elemental. And so Dale Jacobson is a honorary poet laureate of North Dakota. He's written 10 books. He's published 10 books, written all of his life. He's a former adjunct university professor at the University of North Dakota. And so he's going to come on screen now and talk to us a little bit about the theme elemental and how we can use that in our writing.
Hello, everyone. Last time we talked, I talked a little bit about concrete versus abstract language and how using the elements in some way could lead us to larger motifs. And I think as people approach this idea of the four elements, it might be useful and important to point out that I don't think people should feel constricted by, having to use the elements, all four of them, or talk about space in a particular way, but rather perhaps use these as jumping off points. So you think of air, for example, and you think of sky, you think of wind, and so on, maybe think of birds and so forth. To my way of thinking, these would all be elementary in some sense within the motif that we're working with. I pointed out last time that using an example as a way of making a general conclusive statement meaningful and a way of clarifying what we meant by a general statement or general concept. This is a poem by Carl Sandburg again, and it does very much what I'm talking about in terms of using an example. And this is not his example. I mean, it's not coming from his life. It's something he obviously read about and then wrote about. And that'll become clear as I read the poem. Notice at the end, though, how it jumps to a larger statement. So the example is used to actually bring the reader into the experience of a larger observation that he wants us to be aware of. It's kind of a fascinating example he uses as well. On the shores of Lake Michigan, high on a wooden pole, in a box, two purple martins had a home, and were taken away down to Martinique and let loose. They flew home thousands of miles to be home again. And this has lights of wonder and echo and pace and echo again. The birds let out began flying, north by northwest north, till they were back home. How their instruments told them of ceiling temperature, air pressure, how their control boards gave them reports of fuel ignition speeds is out of the record, out. Across spaces of sun and cloud, in rain and fog, through air pockets, wind with them, wind against them, stopping for subsistence rations, whirling in gusts and spiral, these people of the air, these children of the wind, had a sense of where to go and how to go north by northwest north, till they came to one wooden pole, till they were home again. And this has lights of wonder echo and pace and echo again for other children, other people, yes. The red ball of the sun in an evening mist, or the slow fall of rain on planted fields, or the pink sheath of a newborn child, or the path of a child's mouth to a nipple, or the struggle of a bear cub in mother's paws, or the structural weave of the universe witnessed in a moving frame of winter stars, these hold affidavits of struggle. So you can see the ending of this poem really widens out into something else. And this very specific example he uses of the two martins that flew, and how they do that, I have no, that's a mystery to us. And part of Sandberg's point here is that there is mystery in what the meaning of our experience with the universe is. But he doesn't come out and just say that in a prosaic way. He illustrates it with this specific example, and then lapses, I should say, transforms into a more generalized poetry stanza that makes other examples and thereby universalizes this very specific one. So one thing you might do is just look at something that has captivated your interest at some point in your life, or even recently, yesterday, and write down why that is so, why it captivates you. Look at what it is that you find fascinating, and then see if there's some way to connect that specific fascination that you have to a larger statement that, shows how the world itself is, the universe, as Carl Sandburg does, is fascinating. Sometimes, and this is shifting just a little bit to another sort of observation about how the elements might be utilized in poetry. And sometimes we use elements, for example, the wind and so forth, as a metaphor for some other concern that we have, some other fascination we have, to open up our message. But it works because the element that we're using is very concrete. We've all experienced wind, especially in North Dakota, and so on. So here's a little piece by St. John Pierce, French poet, and it's from a long poem which is titled Winds. And at the end of this, I think you'll see what he's doing with the use of wind here. Open your porches to the new year. a world to be born under your footsteps outside of custom and season. The straight line runs to the slopes where the future vibrates. The curved line turns to the squares enchanted by the death of styles. Hasten, hasten, word of the greatest wind. And tapped out by the heel, this meter still to the soil, this meter given to the soil, this meter still the last, as though to the master of song, and the wind with us as master of song. And here the wind speaks. So you might think about just allowing yourself to become the speech of the wind and see what happens. So this is what he says, the wind says. And I shall hasten the rising of sap in your acts. I shall lead your works to ripening, and I shall sharpen for you the act itself like the splinter of quartz or obsidian, life forces or accomplices. Run along the flanks of your women. The luminous shivers run along the flanks of halls laced with gold, and the poet is with you. His thoughts amongst you like watchtowers. Until the evening, may he maintain his gaze on the fortune of man. I shall people for you the abyss of his eyes, and you will turn into acts the dreams he has dared, and into the braid of his song you will weave the gesture he does not conclude. O freshness, freshness rediscovered among the sources of language. The new wine is no truer, the new flax no fresher, and you had so little time to be born to this instant. There were very great winds among the land of men, very great winds at work among us, singing to us the horror of living, and singing to us the honor of living, singing to us and singing to us from the very summit of peril, and with those savage flutes of misfortune, leading us, new men, to our new ways. There were very great forces at work on the causeway of men, very great forces of labor holding us outside of custom and holding us outside of season among the men of custom, among the men of season, and on the savage stone of misfortune, restoring to us the land by vintage bared by new nuptials. And so that's enough. But I think you get the idea of what he's doing with this. The wind brings in the new world, just as we do. So the metaphor of the wind is used to represent the spirit within ourselves. Let's see what else. Sometimes it's possible to simply work around one metaphor and build around it. This is a little poem by Carl Sandburg, Baby Song of the Four Winds. So there's four winds because there's four directions. And he has a stanza for each one. Let me be your baby, south wind. Rock me, let me rock me now. Rock me low, rock me warm, let me be your baby. Comb my hair, west wind, comb me with a cowlick, or let me go with a pompadour. Come on, west wind, make me your baby. North wind, shake me where I'm foolish. Shake me loose and change my ways. Cool my ears with a blue sea wind. I'm your baby, make me behave. And you, east wind, what can I ask? A fog comfort, a fog to tuck me in, fix me so and let me sleep. I'm your baby, and I always was. So that's sort of fun. So I think the point, one of the points I'm trying to get at here is to loosen up a little bit, use one of the elements or all of them. One approach would be to take each of the elements and write a little strophe like Carl Sandburg just did with the four directions of the wind. You could do the same thing, or he could have with earth, and write a little experience regarding that, what your experience with the earth is, what your experience with air, the wind is, what your experience with water and fire. And sometimes these elements aren't exactly accurate. For example, the original alchemists thought that fire gave birth to salamanders because when they set a wood pile on fire, oftentimes salamanders rushed out to save their own lives, and they thought, "Oh, fire gives birth to salamanders." There's two different experiences working there from the point of view of the salamander and from the point of view of the alchemist, and they're quite different, obviously. We haven't touched on space particularly, but that as a motif is certainly a 21st century original, probably, that didn't exist previously in human history outside of Icarus, trying to fly too close to the sun. And so I don't know how many of you may have remembered the moon landing. I even remember the first occasion in space, orbiting the Earth, and what a big event that was. What does that mean for you? What do you think about the idea of expanding our reach to Mars and so on? That might be something to play around with. Well, finally, I would like to, well, maybe for next time I'll touch on another aspect of this. Maybe we'll call that a session for now.